I'm a sucker for tips, so I spent the last couple of days thumbing through my old woodworking books trying to find some of the most interesting ones in my library. So let's see if you've heard of all these tips and whether or not you can use them in your day-to-day projects.
Just the tips. Interesting.
That's right, just the tips. That's what we're taking a look at today. I spent the last few days trying to find some of the most unique ones that I've either never seen before or I just don't see that often. And almost all of these tips are things that you're not going to find on the internet or YouTube, as they come from books. Remember those things? You're in luck, cuz I did the same thing. I thumbed through all my magazines and I found a couple of tips too. How about this one? Always drink upstream from a herd. I guess we're going to get some bonus tips today too, so let's get into it and check out our first tip. And this tip, just like all the tips we're looking at today, comes from a book, and I'll leave a link to all the books I took a look at in the description below. For the first tip of the day, all we're going to need is a wooden screw clamp, a drill press, or a drill. And this is a little hack that I've been meaning to do for a while, as it seems so simple and easy to do. With just a little bit of modification to our screw clamp, we can make a big difference in our panel glue-ups. One of the most difficult things to do when doing panel glue-ups is to get your seams completely flush and flat, and because of this, we typically use clamps or cauls. But this unique hack instantly converts your wooden screw clamp to both a clamp and a caul. To do this, all we need to do is to grab a drill and a Forstner bit, in my case a 1 3/8 inch bit. Then we can place that bit into our drill or a drill press. After we have that bit in place, we'll take our wooden screw clamp and mark out halfway between the front of the clamp and the front handlebar. Then we'll take our drill or the drill press and bore out the intersection between that line and the seam of the clamp. Just make sure while you're doing this, your clamp is completely secured with clamps. Once you have your hole drilled out, you can clean off those wood chips and you should have a hole that runs through the entire width of that clamp. And it's this hole that's meant to straddle the seam of your panel glue up. By placing that seam right where you drilled the hole, you can be assured that you won't get wood glue on the clamps and you're giving support to both pieces of the wood, making sure that they're perfectly aligned. Making your panel glue-ups just a little flatter and instantly converting your clamp to both a clamp and a caul. I always advise to never bring a cooler to church. It's considered bad taste. Our next tip is even more simple, and you're only going to need one thing for this tip, just a washer. Now, if you've ever tried to fit a face frame to a wall that's just not square, you know that it can be very difficult. And most likely you're going to have to scribe a line onto that face frame to get it to fit perfectly. And there's a heck of a lot of scribing tools out there, but there's one problem with them. These all cost money. So instead, why not just dig through your hardware drawer and pull out a washer? Let me show you how this might work in this exaggerated example. By simply taking your washer and placing it up against the edge of your wall, you can take your pencil and place it into the center of the washer and run that washer all along your wall. With that line now perfectly scribed to match your wall, you can cut it whatever fashion you see fit and the two pieces should match up perfectly. And I'm pretty sure Amazon doesn't have a cheaper scribing tool. If you vacuumed your bed more than twice in the last couple of days, it's time to change your sheets. So my next hack is probably one of my favorites. In fact, I've done a couple of shorts on this hack. So you may have seen this little contraption in the corner of my shop before, but what the heck is it? This little device is one of the most labor-saving ways to revitalize any clamp in your shop. And it's really not complicated or hard to make. It's simply 1.5 inch PVC pipe with an end cap on the end. Once that end cap is glued or sealed, all you need is white vinegar. Simply pour that vinegar into the pipe and you're ready to go. And now it's time to grab your clamp that's caked on with dried glue. Then you can take off the handle and drop the bar into that vinegar. Then it's just a waiting game. Wait for at least a half hour and preferably leave it overnight. And once your time is up and you remove that clamp, you'll find that all that glue has dissolved or can be easily removed with a rag. Then you can add the handle back on and you'll see that your clamps open and close with ease now. And that vinegar can be used over and over again. Simply grab another end cap, place it on top until you need to clean your clamps again. You'll be amazed at how well this tip works, as I've been doing it for years. A centerpiece of any table should never be prepared by Fred. Fred's my taxidermist. Our next tip is another clamping hack, but we're not going to be using this. If I've heard one blue tape hack, I've heard them all. This time we're going to step it up a notch with some packing tape. Now I don't know why I hadn't thought about this before, but why not use packing tape instead of blue tape? Especially if you've got a nice little dispenser like this. Not only is packing tape stronger than blue tape, but it's also a little bit more versatile. The strength of this tape could be perfect for adding things like edge banding to plywood, as the clamping force of this tape really goes beyond that blue tape. And by having a dispenser like this, you can really grab just what you need or even apply it directly to your wood, versus trying to peel that blue tape away. Not to mention, since wood glue doesn't stick to it, it can be used in a lot of glue up situations. If you know you've been included in your cousin's will, it's considered tacky to drive a U-Haul to the funeral. So our next tip is a quick and easy way for restoring some of your shop surfaces. One of the most indispensable items you can have in your shop is some paste wax. Not only is it great for maintaining those cast iron surfaces, but it also makes those tabletops slicker than pig snot on a radiator. But sometimes we don't have the time to redo an entire surface and we just want a quick refresh. And that's where this next tip comes into play. Why not head up to the kitchen and grab a box of wax paper? When you begin to notice your wood's getting a little more stubborn running across that cast iron, just grab that wax paper. Take that paper and give your surfaces a good rub down. By rubbing it down, some of the wax that's on that paper will transfer to your surface, instantly giving a quick rejuvenation to those cast iron surfaces. Make sure you always have some cat food on you, as letting a cat out of a bag is a heck of a lot easier than getting it back in. Our next tip also includes a household item, using a product that I'm guessing you have on hand if you have kids. Clean wood surfaces are key, especially after you do your sanding and before you add your finish, and typically I use mineral spirits. And in a previous video, I suggested putting those mineral spirits in a spray bottle to make application easier. And that works great, but in reading through one of my tips book, they suggested using something even easier. Why not use baby wipes or alcohol pads? By simply taking one of those wipes or pads and cleaning off your surface, you can instantly get that wood ready for finish, making these an extremely easy way to move on with your project. Before we get Bert's next hillbilly tip, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, if you haven't already, check out my website, Flynndogwoodwork.com. There you can find some fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. Lastly, if you're interested in any of the books I'm using for this video or any of the tools, I'll leave links in the description below so that you can go check them out for yourself. Hygiene's very important, and you should be cleaning out your ears regularly. This is something that should only be done in private with your own truck keys. Our next little tip has everything to do with drill bit organization. I am simply terrible at putting drill bits away over at the drill press after I use them. Now I do have this nice little rotating drill press shelf, but frankly, it's a mess. And because of that mess, it can sometimes be very difficult to find the bit that I need. That is until I got the idea of adding a drill bit holster. Now this isn't a new idea, as it's simply a magnet that most people use to hold their wrenches and screwdrivers. But why not add this magnet vertically next to our drill press so that we can store all of those bits? This instantly separates all those bits and puts them on display so that you can grab exactly what you need. There are two theories to arguing with a woman. I don't know either one, but that's okay because I heard neither one works. My next little tip is all about preventing the loss of those tiny little pins and bits. Now, if you've been around the block a bit, you know that a lot of the tools that you buy come with small little accessories that you'll inevitably lose. And many tools, like popular DFM squares, come with a couple of pins. Now, one solution is to attach these accessories with some blue tape when the tool's not in use. But that's only a temporary solution, and who's going to remember to do that? So why not create a more permanent solution? Now, believe it or not, many of those pins are not made out of aluminum. They're actually magnetic. This means wherever you store those tools, you can simply add a rare earth magnet to keep those pins in place. And you can even attach one of these magnets to the tool itself. Now, for things like squares, this probably isn't possible, as those pins will just get in the way. But for some tools, like my new miter spline jig, this can be the perfect solution. Simply take that jig and attach a magnet with some CA glue and attach your hardware. And now, anytime you go to use this tool, you'll know exactly where everything's at. Avoid throwing bones and scraps on the floor of a restaurant. They typically don't have dogs. The next tip that I found is something that I wish I would have known about when I was first starting out. When I first started out, I didn't have this huge clamp wall. And just like a lot of us do, I started off with a lot of pipe clamps, as the length of reach with these clamps is only limited to the length of the pipe you can buy. But I quickly found myself needing longer and longer pipe, and I even went as far as purchasing a really long pipe coming in at 10 feet long. What I didn't realize is not only is this a pain in the ass to store, but it's completely unnecessary. And that's because of one tiny little addition that I should have been using instead. And that little addition is a simple little pipe coupler. By simply taking one small clamp and taking off one end of the clamp, you can add a coupler to it and instantly extend its range. With the coupler added to the smaller clamp, you can add another piece of pipe, slide the end back on, and you instantly have a larger clamp, which makes this a much more affordable way to extend your pipe clamps and is a heck of a lot easier to store. Livestock is usually, and I do mean usually, a bad choice for a wedding gift. Our next tip of the day is another clamping tip, but this time not for the pipe clamp. One of my favorite styles of clamp is the F-clamp. And that's because the power of these things is really uncomparable. But it's the power of this clamp along with over-tightening that can sometimes damage your project, especially when working with softer woods like cedar or pine. We've all been there. You go to remove the clamp only to find the indentation of your clamp on that wood. But in reading one of these books, they suggested a softer way in dealing with these clamps. And that is by incorporating a simple furniture pad. By taking one of these self-adhesive pads and attaching it to your clamp jaw, you can reduce the amount of damage to your projects. If I take that same clamp and tighten it down with the same amount of force, you can see there's very little damage, especially when we compare it to our previous clamping point. And in fact, I think you'll be hard-pressed in finding any damage when using one of these pads. And once you adhere one of these pads to the clamp, they're not going anywhere. In fact, I can lift the entire clamp by holding that pad, making these an excellent way to protect your softwoods. As hard as it may be, try not to lay rubber when traveling in a funeral procession. It's considered bad taste. Well, that's going to take us through 10 of my tips and 10 of Bert's tips. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, be sure to check out my website, www.flynndoggwoodwork.com. Until next time, take care as always. Never commit murder in the country, as you're bound to get pinned. Everybody there has the same DNA and no dental records. Don't have a spindle sander? Consider getting a drum sander. This does just about the same thing and is a heck of a lot cheaper. Be careful when you're driving. Believe it or not, deers don't always cross at them deer crossing signs. When installing drawer faces, consider adding another shim to the bottom to account for sagging once weight is put into the drawer. You can also add additional weight to the drawer before you add those drawer fronts. Clamps can be a great option for this. When you gotta tow a car, never use pantyhose. Duct tape works much better. Tired of getting burn marks on your wood when running it through the table saw? Consider cutting your wood oversized and doing one final pass, just removing a little bit to remove the burn. You can trust anyone in life, but you still want to cut that deck of cards. Need a quick and easy way to apply wood glue onto a large surface? Well, you could buy a glue spreader, but why waste the money? Those credit cards you have all eventually expire and work just as well as that glue spreader. Every fence needs to be built considering 3 things. Is it horse high, pig tight, and bull strong? Make sure your tractor is always tuned up. A bumblebee is considerably faster than a John Deere. Never squat wearing your spurs. Always offer to bait your date's hook, especially on that first date. Always dim them headlights for oncoming traffic, even if a deer's in sight and your gun is loaded. Never drop your gun to hug a grizzly.